Hi, this is Polenik from C3 Method. We had a YouTube viewer recently ask what my two favorite exercises were to build the middle delts and rear delts. For the middle delts, my favorite exercise to start with is a cable one-arm lateral raise. I specifically set the pulley height at my thigh. The reason why is whenever I start the movement, I'll hold onto the handle and I'll step away from the cable. The weight load of this movement is actually in the direction of the cable, so my shoulder muscle is actually already loaded in this position. So when the shoulder muscle is most stretched, I am already loaded, and this would actually be the hardest part of the range of motion. As I would raise out to the side, it's still hard, there's still some weight to it, but this is actually an easier position because the cable actually comes closer to my shoulder joint, and that actually makes it lighter. As my hand comes down, now everything's further away from my shoulder, and that makes it feel heavier. So I actually have the heaviest part of the range of motion when my muscle is most stretched at the bottom of the movement. This will actually be contrasting to the second movement, which I like to do, which is a good old-fashioned dumbbell lateral raise. When we do dumbbell lateral raises, it actually inverts that strength curve that we have from the cable. We're actually lightest at the bottom and heaviest at the top when we do dumbbells because we're working against gravity. Whereas at the cable, since now the line of force is pretty much like sideways, we're heaviest at the bottom and lightest at the top. So these are actually really complementary movements because we can challenge the muscle in both the lengthened and the shortened position. And then also, the reason why I like to do raises is it's an isolation to just the shoulder muscle. Can you do overhead presses and build great shoulders? Absolutely. However, what I've found is people like myself with short upper arm bones, when we do overhead presses, our triceps take predominantly the majority of the stress, and the shoulder is more of a secondary stabilizer. So especially for people like me and anybody else with short upper arms, we want to focus more on raises. I'll use raises to pre-exhaust my presses, so I can actually make my shoulders more fatigued than my triceps. So then when I go into presses, I do get more shoulder work out of the presses. However, if I was only going to pick two, if I do have my two favorite, which I do all the time, are actually these variations. So the first variation, like I said, is a cable one-arm lateral raise. I'm going to set the pulley at the height of my thigh, so then when I step out, the weight is loaded into this stretched position. From here, I like to just kind of put my other hand against myself and my belly, just to kind of make sure everything's nice and controlled. It gives me a little bit of feedback as to how much body sway I have, and it looks better than me just kind of leaving my arm out here like a weirdo. So I put my hand here, and then what you won't be able to see at this angle is when my hand is here, I do push my hips back just a little bit, and then I'll raise like this. So my shoulder always stays a little bit in front of my hip, and that makes sure that I'm better isolating the middle deltoid, the middle shoulder, to whereas if I lean back like this, I would start to incorporate more of the front of my shoulder. So I will accept the tension, hand on the belly, hips back a little bit, and then my goal is to raise and come down where I still feel tension in the muscle. I don't want to actually let my upper arm bone kind of rest into my body like I am right now. There's not enough tension. You're actually kind of like deloading the tension. So we want to stay where I'm coming down and touching my body so I know I got the full range of motion, but I don't want to let my arm rest into my body. So this is my favorite movement, and if I was only going to pick one, this would be the one that I would pick. But this is the first movement we can start with because it gives us a really nice stress in that stretched position, the lengthened position of the muscle. Usually I'll start this with higher rep sets to get the shoulder warmed up, so usually around 20 reps, and then I'll progressively get heavier. Sometimes I'll stay at higher reps, sometimes I'll come down lower to around 10 reps. I'll even go lower than that every once in a while, but typically if you go too heavy and too low of reps, you start to incorporate your trap and you start to get more body sway into the movement. The benefit of this exercise is that it's so isolative to the shoulder. So you want to stay with a weight that you can still make sure that the shoulder is doing the majority of the work. You don't want to get so heavy where other things start to help out. So that's the first exercise, is a cable one arm lateral raise with the pulley set at mid-thigh height. Exercise number 2 for the middle delts is a lateral raise. Now specifically, I'll do a technique that I like to call bounce reps. So I'll do a normal set to good form failure, and then when I can't control the eccentric, the lowering portion very well, I'll take a little extra bounce and get momentum to kind of use my hips and my body to throw a rep to the top and then try to resist the weight coming down to the bottom. So I call it a bounce because, I'll show you here in a second, is it looks like I'm trying to get a bounce out of the bottom of the movement. So I'll do 5 regular reps, then I'll add 2 bounce reps. So for the regular reps, I'm trying to control the eccentric, the way down. That's where we're going to get a lot of stress in the muscle, and we get a lot of growth by controlling that eccentric, that lowering portion. Then once I can't do more, I kind of get a little swing and I resist the eccentric, a little swing and resist. So I call them bounce reps, but that's the idea that we're looking for, is to take our normal repetition technique to good form failure, and I'll define that by not being able to control the eccentric as well. So if I were to get to the top and I just drop down, there's no point in doing that anymore. So once I feel like I can't control the eccentric, I'll come to that bottom portion, get that little bit of swing, and then get to the top and then try to resist. The reason why this works really well is we're actually stronger in the eccentric portion than we are in the concentric, the contraction portion. So when we fail the contraction portion, the muscle is actually not fully fatigued. We can continue to stress the eccentric portion to get the muscle further into fatigue. And that's the benefit of those bounce reps, is it gives us the momentum to get through the concentric so we can then control the eccentric. Now for this one, I do like to go both high reps and heavy. So I'll do sets of 20 with a few bounce reps. I'll even come down as low as sets of 4 or 5 reps with 1 or 2 bounce reps. So I like to play around with both heavyweight low reps and still as heavy as I can, but high reps. So these are my 2 favorite middle delt exercises. For rear delts, one of the exercises I really enjoy is reverse flies. With the setup we have here at home, I do it with our cable stack. However, you can do this on a chest fly, reverse fly machine. That would be fine as well. With this, basically what I'll do is I'll grab the cable, and I like to grab on the upper side of the stopper, and that gives me a little more control because I can kind of grab around that stopper. Then I'll come over, grab the other side, and I make sure that they are crisscrossed, and then I'll step towards the middle of the machine. Now from here, what I'm thinking of doing is I want to have my spine, my posture normal, but I want to think of extending my arms out in front of me to get a nice stretch in my shoulders. And now staying very wide, I want to think of keeping my hands very far away from my body. And when I'm coming out to the side, I'm not thinking of pulling back like this. I actually want to think of touching my pinkies to the walls. So I want to think of pushing my hands wide, not back. So I'm going to stay wide with my hands like I'm reaching out towards the walls. and then reach out in front of me. So I'm thinking of really keeping everything nice and long and away from my body. This is going to help me isolate the rear delt away from the mid back. We would like to not have our lower traps and our rhomboids get involved. We want to keep this in the rear delt. And by keeping my hands as far away from me as I can, it isolates the rear delts very well. There we go. So for this one, I usually do a lot of high rep sets to get everything warmed up. Usually sets of even 20 to 30 to get a really good pump in there. And then I'll progressively get a little heavier. I typically don't go any lower than 10 reps on this, but that's a good range in general, is starting with high reps, working my way to lower reps. And then a little trick that you can do that helps this is when you're thinking of holding the cables, if we can, we want to actually think of slanting our palms a little bit away from us. So instead of holding it perfectly flat, I'm thinking of tilting my thumbs down towards the floor and then pulling out and pulling away. This further isolates the rear delts very well and can make sure that we get a really good stimulus into the rear delts without other muscles taking over. The second exercise for rear delts is still on the cables. We're going to be doing reverse flies again, but we're going to do them one arm, and now with our palm neutral, which means our palms would be facing each other if I were to use both hands. The first version being palms down, it works the shoulders very well. And then if you were to rotate to this neutral position, and now what I'll be doing is I'll be grabbing the cable, stepping away, and I'm going to do a reverse fly. This will start to incorporate more of my middle delt to help out for the rear delt, and that's actually okay. If I'm targeting both the middle and the rear delt, it's going to grow kind of that back half of the shoulder. That's going to be the goal, the outcome that we want. So it's good to bring in the help of the middle delt to continue this movement. Now for this one, what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I'm in this full stretch, that there is tension against the rear delt. In order for me to do that, I actually have to turn into that arm. So now I can actually feel the weight pulling the rear delt open. If I stay with my chest facing, I can feel the tension of the cable pulling on my joints, but not on the muscle. So we turn into it a little bit, but then as I would do the reverse fly and get to a good contraction, I want to make sure that I'm not so turned that the cable hits me, or that now I'm kind of perpendicular to the cable. Well, actually, I guess this would be parallel, perpendicular to the machine, to where now there's no tension, it's just kind of pushing through the joints. So you have to practice a little bit to find your body tilt to where I'm turned into it enough that I have tension here, and then I can do the reverse fly. Let me step in a little bit. Do the reverse fly, and there's still tension on this contraction. And similar to the first movement, when I'm doing this, I'm thinking of stretching my arm out away from the body. I'm not trying to twist and get it as far behind me as possible. I want to kind of keep my shoulder in place and think of flexing the backside of my shoulder rather than twisting my trunk, my whole shoulder joint, torso, everything in the upper body. I want to keep all this stable and flex the backside of my shoulder at the contraction of the movement. So it's a good loaded stretch and a good contraction. Good loaded stretch, good contraction. So this would be my second choice for how to best target the rear delt, the backside of the shoulder. so those are my two favorite movements for both the side delt and the rear delt. So for the side, the middle delt, we have the cable one-arm lateral raises with the pulley at your mid-thigh, and then we have the bounce reps using the dumbbells. And for the rear delts, we have the crisscrossed cables, but you can do that on a reverse fly machine if you would like. And then we have the one-arm neutral grip reverse flies, which I really love. It's a great pump and a great feeling in the backside of the shoulder. So thank you to the YouTube viewer who asked for this video topic. And if anybody has any questions, if you'd like to see some other things in videos, just let me know in the comment section below. And thank you for watching.